everybody, happy Thursday evening live tutorial stream. It is Torch Thursday on the Beating Dreams stream, so I hope everyone is ready to play with some fire and make a fun pair of earrings this evening. Our project tonight is this is our pattern wire hoops, and I have a confession to make. I forgot to order pattern wire. I used literally the last 6 inches that we had in the entire store to make those prototypes last week, which means I had plenty of time to restock. I just forgot. So instead of pattern wire for my hoops today, I'm going to be using rectangular wire, but this does kind of bring up the fact that you can really use any kind of wire for this technique. It's a fun technique where we're actually going to make our own earring post, solder a loop to the earring post, and then put the hoop through the loop. And that was an unintentional rhyming that I did just there. But the technique for just the earring post is a really great thing to know, because you can always take said earring posts and you don't have to put a hoop through them. You can dangle beads off of them. You could do a multiple hoop with round wire. You could use half round wire. So there's so many different things that you can do with this technique, even if you happen to have, you know, not ordered any pattern wire. But let's talk tools and supplies, and let's talk for a sec about what is pattern wire and like some different kinds of wire that you can use for this. Okay, so this is pattern wire. This is actually the bronze version, or something very similar. I don't think it's actually the bronze, hold on. No, it's not the bronze version of what I used for the prototype, but it's similar to what I used for the prototype. So you get pattern wire in a number of kind of different shapes. This is what I would consider kind of half-round pattern wire. So this is basically probably a half-round wire that they then put through a mill to put the pattern on the surface. And then you also will get flat pattern wire, which looks more like this. So both of these wires would work for this project. You can see even the flat pattern wire it's got a decent amount of body to it. The half-round pattern wire is a little bit even thicker. And this one is most similar to what I actually used for the prototype. I'm not using this tonight because I am feeling super lazy. That's like when you're feeling lazy, but also in your head you're wearing a cape. And I don't want to use super pickle tonight. So that's why I'm using sterling flat wire. So this is just plain old sterling flat wire. This is a 5mm by 1mm wire, and it's going to work just fine for my project tonight. If I wanted to, I could texture it with a hammer or stamps to give it a little bit of interest, but I'm going to go for something kind of clean line tonight. And then finally, in pattern wire, this is what happens when you don't read the dimensions in the catalog. This is pattern wire. It is so thick that it's literally impossible for me to bend it without annealing it and then employing tools. Like I can barely make it move. It's so thick. This is 1 full troy ounce of silver right here. This piece is a whopping 5 inches long. This is what happens when you look in the catalog and you're like, oh, that's pretty. Dink. And you don't notice that it says 1 troy ounce equals 5 inches of wire. This is hugely giant. I've had this for years, and yeah, have not yet, ow, I just hurt my wrist trying to bend that. Yeah, I've had this for years, still have not figured out what the heck I'm going to do with it because it is just so incredibly chunky. So the moral of that story is, yeah, read the dimensions in the catalog. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat because I know there are people of you out there and it's not telling me, I mean it's telling me you're out there, but it's not showing me your chats. I know Lori said hi, so I'm respawning the chat box, so hopefully that'll work better. Okay, so I'm not using the chonky pattern wire because once again I can't freaking bend it, so we're going to use this 5mm sterling silver flat wire instead for my project this evening. In addition to your wire, you're going to need the components for your earring posts. So that in this case is going to be, oops, I should have got these out of the bag. Okay, that's going to be 2 earring posts with pads. These are 6mm pads. I'm using 6mm bezel cups. There's a chance the pad might actually kind of overlay the bezel cup a bit, so if that does, I might have to sand it down just a tad just to make it look not so ugly. Now they make these pad posts in 4mm as well. If I happen to have any in 4mm, I'd be using them, but I don't. Apparently this is the week of I didn't get any of the supplies that I needed for tutorials. So sterling silver pad posts. You're going to need a pair of sterling silver bezel cups. And bezel cups, for anybody who's not familiar, are just these little die-struck little bezel settings. They come pre-manufactured, and they're super useful for setting cabochons. You're going to need a pair of cabochons that will fit into your bezel cups, and I just noticed that these are really not the same size, so I'm going to need to fix that in a minute. And then you're going to need 2 soldered rings. Hey Heather, can I ask you a huge favor?
Yeah, what you need?
Like 3 or 4 6mm carnelian cabochons, because these two, they don't match.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got it.
And then you're going to need a pair of soldered rings, so you can make them or you can buy them. I was really happy that we had 7mm soldered rings. I didn't order them, but I was happy we had them, so I don't have to make them. The main thing here is your ring has to easily go over whatever wire you've chosen to make your hoops, right? You want your wire to hang freely from this soldered ring. So you are the bestest. Thank you so much.
Get what you need and I will.
This is really the only 2 carnelian cabochons in here? Wow. I'm just taking an assortment of tiger eye cabochons and
Okay.
we're gonna call that good.
And then I'll get that out of your way.
Thanks, since I am packed in here tighter than an anchovy in a can.
It's true.
But without the, you know, delicious oil bath. So just to kind of, you know, illustrate my point. So that ring worked great for the wire that I've chosen, but if I were, say, you know, to try using this pattern wire, it wouldn't be big enough. This is where just being aware of the fact that you can totally make your own rings out of wire, any gauge, any size, anytime you want, is really a powerful thing, and I should definitely throw a couple of jump ring tutorials in the future. So now we're going to go ahead and make our hoops. So you can make the hoops whatever size you want, okay? You can make them small, medium, or big ass. It's absolutely up to you. I think these were made with my trusty little ring sticks. I'm probably going to stick with that size just because that's a tool that is in front of me. Also, hey, I didn't write tools on the thing because it's a soldering class. There's a lot of them. So let me go over tools with you before I start making my hoops. So we are, of course, fabricating. That means we are going to need a torch. I've got my trusty Blazer butane torch. It's my favorite torch for fabricating. As most of you know, I've got a soldering surface over here that's going to be a solderite board. And I like the solderites because they're a little bit more neat and tidy than like a charcoal block. Okay, I'm not getting any of those. That's annoying, right? Seriously, the chonky pattern wire did win, but what is not winning is chats. I don't even know who's on the light side because I can't see it. That's annoying as heck. Alright, everyone bear with me while I do I'm gonna stare at my computer face for a minute, and while I try and get that chat up. I mean, as far as technical difficulties goes, I'll still take this one over the nothing's working technical difficulty that was on Saturday. So, oh, sorry, I was trying to search Restream chat and I searched Restream cat, which is different.
Yes. That's Ziggy.
That's Ziggy. Ziggy's the Restream cat. It's true. Yay! All right, we've got a working chat thing. Yay! Cool. Oh, Pam's going to the beach. That's awesome. Okay, and also hold on. I need to catch up on what I missed. What did I miss?
Not a lot.
Oh, I missed that Lori has a frost advisory in place. I don't know that I wanted to know that I missed that, but that's awesome. God, I've gotten so used to gardening in this part of the country. I don't know that, well, I was never used to gardening that far north, but such a short growing season. Okay, so, torch, soldering board, pickle in a pickle pot. We'll talk about what that is and what it does in a few minutes. Flux in a flux jar, and a nasty ass paintbrush with which to apply it. The nasty ass part isn't obligatory, but I guarantee you if you use your paintbrush for flux for any period of time, it's just going to become nasty by the nature of the fact that flux is this kind of goopy substance. You're going to need your pliers, which are around here somewhere, and your wire cutters. So your basic ones, chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, good heavy duty wire cutter, because that rectangular wire or that pattern wire is a little bit chunky, and it's a little bit, you know, going to be hard on your finer grade wire cutters. You're going to need some fine steel wool, and you're going to need a file. So we are, of course, going to be dealing with circles tonight. You're also going to need a ring clamp and a prong pusher. There's probably other things that I forgot, but I will remind you of what they are when I remember that I forgot them. Also, as far as solder goes, we are going to be using all three of our main densities of solder. So we're going to be using medium, easy, and extra easy solder for our project today. So now I'm going to go ahead and commence with making my hoops. So if you want to make a loop, the easiest way to do it is make a coil, and you just need a round object. Again, I'm going to use my trusty ring stick. I'm just going to take my flat wire, hold it against my ring stick, and just rotate it around. Now, as those of you, I'm moving this out of the camera because I don't want to jab anything. Those of you who have been on the Beating Dreams stream for a while know, when I let go of this, it's going to spring open. So if you have a particular size that you want for your hoops, you need to make sure that you are using a form that's slightly smaller than what you actually want your circle to be. Oh my god, salad and beading. Love that. Except for the salad part. If I can have the salad without the lettuce and the vegetable-y bits, like just a pile of cheese and crunchies and maybe some chicken, that sounds good. It sounds like a solid dinner plan, actually.
Chicken bowl?
It's a salad with no salad. Just go with me here.
Okay.
Now, you probably can tell that this circle is bigger than this circle. That's because my ring mandrel is tapered. It's a cone, not a... See, there you go, chicken salad. It is legitimately a salad. And it contains no vegetables if you make it right. Definitely not down with the people who put grapes, walnuts, or celery in chicken salad. Really? I did have chicken salad once that had mandarin oranges in it. That was actually pretty good.
That is good.
But yeah, keep your vegetable-y bits out of my chicken salad, por favor. That's Spanish for please.
Ah.
So now so what I did is I just kind of unspooled this a bit. So now we have two coils that are the same size. I'm just going to do one minor adjustment here. Yes, Mary did come and she brought me, haha, the seeds of the hairy balls. Very excited by this.
Yes, Mary brought in seeds.
Seeds of the hairy balls. Yes, her hairy ball milkweeds finally exploded and released their seeds. And so I have hairy ball milkweed seeds. I'm very excited for my pollinator garden next year to have some fun native cool things. Fluffy seeds from hairy balls. 4 hairy balls from hairy balls. They come from them and then they create more of them. So yes, very, very excited by that.
What are seeds from hairy balls?
Hairy balls is it's probably not actually called hairy balls, but it's a type of native milkweed, which is a host plant for monarch caterpillars. Okay. And so it makes these seed pods that look like hairy balls, and then they explode and make fuzzy seeds, or fluffy seeds.
Fair enough. Have fun with your hairy balls.
I will have a great time with my hairy balls. And yes, there's a gracious plenty, Jenny, and I was going to offer you some, and I forgot. There are enough hairy ball seeds for everybody. And Mary is still growing them, so there can be more. Okay, so now let's cut these. So my little adjustment was this. So this is the part that I was holding on the mandrel to make the curve. Usually when you do that, it doesn't press down quite as nicely. So what I had here at the very end was this kind of straight sort of ski jump thing going on. So all I did was I took my pliers and I curved like so. Now we're having apparently a snot drowning incident. Not ladylike snot, the other kind.
Oh my god. Ladylike snot was the type of bead that we have.
It was my description of the color of pre-night was dainty ladylike snot, which I did download all the clips, so now I have to figure out the best program to rip the audio from the clips so that we can start having silly drops on the stream. So much technical knowledge that I don't already have that I need to acquire. Okay, so this is a flush wire cutter. It's only a flush wire cutter if you miss. So what that means is that it cuts on one side of the cutter a nominally flat edge. On the other side, it cuts a pointy edge. And I cut this so tiny you might not be able to see it, but yes, you see how pointy it is? We don't want that pointy part when we're soldering because solder won't flow across the gap. So we need to flush up our edges. We can help ourselves with that by properly using our wire cutters. So I've got my flat edge there. Now what I'm going to do, and I cut that just to kind of rewind, I cut that like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reverse my cutters. I'm just going to rotate them 180 degrees the other direction. And I make sure that end is buried in the cutter and snip. So now what I have is two flat edges. I didn't do a great job on cutting that perpendicular, but this is what files are for. Now, we're going to go ahead and flush that. It's okay, Mary, you have so much other knowledge. And I can start trading you beads for seeds if you want, because you have good seeds. Well, I definitely have to work on, so yeah, I deadheaded all of my coneflowers, and I think harvesting seeds from them is just as easy as pulling them off. And then one of the beautiful gardens that I walk past on my way from where we park to Beating Greens has some beautiful Ruellia that are about to go to seed. So I might jack some Ruellia seeds just because they make lots of them, so I don't think they're going to miss them.
I'm going to eat it.
Do it! Oh my god.
Because it's not going to make anyone mad.
Eat food. Okay, so now what I have to do in order to make this solderable is I need to fix this gap that you can see right there. Alright, you can see where those two edges are not completely aligning. The reason for that is because even though this is a flush wire cutter that I used, the cutter only cuts a nominally flush edge, because what wire cutters do is they basically pinch until you have this tiniest little piece of metal that basically is so brittle that it snaps off. So you're always, even when you're using a flush cutter, you're always going to have a little burr down the middle of your project, and that of course is going to mean that your ends can't meet flush. This is where our good friend the file comes into play. Everybody say hi to Mr. File. Yes, everybody loves filing. It's a rotten lie. Nobody loves filing. I don't even love filing. I'm fine with filing, but nobody loves it. Except for Mandy, but I don't think she's on the stream tonight. Also, don't tell her, but she's a little weird. Alright, so I'm going to take my flat file. I'm going to, right, everyone say hi to Mr. File. Alright, I'm kind of envisioning Mr. File kind of like Clippy, the just, you know, perpetually annoying virtual assistant from Microsoft Word, Vista, or whatever the hell that terrible, terrible program was however many years ago. He's got to have googly eyes. Anything that's Mr. Oh dear, that's the wrong one. Has to have googly eyes, I say. But so I'm going to take the file, I'm going to put it flush up against, and I'm just going to push upwards with my file. This type of file is a single cut that only bites on the push stroke. Try not to drag it back against the metal with pressure, because it's not really great for your file. If you want to, you can lighten up your pressure and drag it back down. I prefer to kind of pick it up. It's up to you. It kind of depends on what my mood is. I know. Do I want to glue googly eyes to my file? We'll see. Alright, so now I've flattened out my end. You can see that's nice and flat. You can compare that to the way that this one looks. You can see how kind of jaggedy it is. We're going to do the same with this one. Now I will say, if you're going to fabricate a lot, now I went through years of fabrication using those El Cheapo needle file sets, and those are the file sets that I sell here at Beating Dreams. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them, but really if you're going to be doing a lot of fabricating, invest in a really nice file, like a Swiss file. This is a Friedrich Dick. Yes, that is actually legitimately the brand name. Yep. See? It literally says F Dick on the handle of my file. Not even making that up. Yep. Seriously, they're really good files. And they're not that expensive. I mean, you're looking at, you know, $16 to $25 for a file rather than for a set of files, but trust me, worth their weight in gold if you do this a lot. So then what I did is I set up a tension fit so that my edges are pressed up against each other and they're holding tension. I'm not having to actually hold them together, because holding things together whilst applying flame is usually bad for the skin parts of you. And now this is ready to go, ready to get soldered. I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to do the same with my other one. So hi, there are a lot of you out there. It's so nice to see all of you on the Thursday, on the Thursday evening torch stream. Hope everyone's having a good Thursday. Okay, so this is the one that I screwed up the cut. See how that's not perpendicular? I need to file that off. I can't make more metal appear to square that off, so I got to take off. Hey Nino 2000! Hey Corvus. I know, right? Sometimes you just need a file that says FDIC. Seriously, they really are really good files. Ta-da! Okay, so see, I can kind of hold it together and see, hey, did I do a good job? I got a little bit of gap up there. You can see it when I put my finger behind it. So that means I need to do a little more work with my file. So filing is one of those annoying prep steps that's not fun. It's not. It's boring. It's putsy. It can be very frustrating. Unfortunately, you gotta do it. There's really no way around it. Like, and I've had people be like, well, can you use a grinder? Can you do this? Can you do that? And it's like, well, a lot of times the problem with prepping with machines is if you're not really good at it, which I'm not saying you're not, but it's really easy to just completely go off the rails a lot quicker with power tools than with hand tools. So, you know, if you start going crooked or whatever, all of a sudden you've taken off a solid 1/4 inch of your silver, you still haven't lined it up, and now all of a sudden you have 2 hoops that don't match anymore. You know, and these are all not insurmountable problems, but still, I'm still a big proponent of hand tools. Okay, so I've got my 2 circles. There is so much crap in the streaming area right now. It's like, where do I put everything? Okay, those are my samples. Those can go off. Okay, so these are my circles. And they're not the mostest circular things ever, so are they the same size? I think they're the same size. I'm gonna go with yes, they are the same size. So I think what I'm gonna do, I'll have to fix that at the end. Okay, I'm gonna do my earring posts next. Sorry, just evaluating. Oi! Okay, you need to go away, you stupid pop-up spyware crap. This is what happens when you try and download free programs. Okay, so I've got my 2 bezel cups, and I've got 6mm bezel cups that I'm going to be using for my earring posts today. And I'm going to start by taking some flux, and I'm going to paint flux on the back of my earring posts. Let me just stir this up because it's a little crunchy. So what is flux? Flux is this white pasty chemical that I'm putting onto the back of my bezel cups. And what it actually does, its purpose is it is a protectant. So it actually protects the metal from oxidizing. So when I hit my metal with a torch, the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to turn black. It's going to oxidize. The problem with that is that the solder can't flow through that oxide layer. You know, this is a problem with long necklaces that you double. It's like you get them where you want them and then they just keep moving. But anyway, so if you want your soldering to actually work, you've got to protect that metal from the oxide, which means that you are going to need to use a chemical such as flux. I use a paste flux. It's white, looks kind of like kindergarten paste. I actually like to thin mine out with a little water so that it's more like the consistency of yogurt, just so it's easier to paint. But there are lots of fluxes out there. Some people use paste flux like I do. Some people use liquid flux. Some people use spray flux. There are a lot of options out there. Now I'm going to take some solder, and this is my medium solder. So the medium solder is my highest density solder, meaning that it melts at the highest temperature. And I just need 2 very, very tiny pieces, all right? It is shocking to most people, oftentimes myself included, how little solder it actually takes to close a joint. So those 2 wee tiny small pieces are gonna work just fine. Now, it's always a good idea to have a tweezers handy for things like picking up flux and also picking up hot things, which we'll talk about in a minute. I'm going to take that flux and I'm going to put it on top of the back of my bezel cups. So again, my bezel cups are face down on my soldering surface, and what I'm about to do is what's called sweating the solder onto the back of these bezel cups. But before I light my torch, we're going to do the real quick 5-point soldering safety lecture. Let me preface by saying, of course, I am not a credentialed anything as far as safety goes, just some rando on the internet. There's really no need to listen to me, but I have been teaching soldering successfully with no deaths for 10 years at least. And there are some things that consistently come up as far as A, creating a safe workspace in your home for soldering, and B, being safe in a community workspace. So numero uno, try and keep 6 to 8 inches of clear space around your torch at all times. I'm not doing that right now because webcam, light, covered in a tissue. Like, do as I say, not as I do. If you're not showing this to the internet, you can be a lot more safe. Trust the webcam that I melted at the end of 2020. It gets hot, so 6 to 8 inches around your flame at all times with nothing that's flammable, nothing that's meltable. That is going to make it very, very unlikely that you're accidentally going to start a fire, which is exactly what we want. We want unlikely fire starting. Number 2, once you've had a flame going in your workspace from that point forward, always make sure to assume that everything in your workspace is hot enough to burn you, because it probably is. Things like your soldering board, your torch, your tweezers, your metal, of course, will all hold heat way longer than you oftentimes think they should. It's very easy to burn yourself. So tweezers are your friend for picking up hot objects. Number 3, ventilation is important. If you find yourself coughing, hacking, wheezing, or feeling otherwise uncomfortable in the lung area after you've been soldering, you may want to rethink your ventilation situation. Number 4, if you're not actively soldering with your torch, turn it off. These torches are very easy to ignite. They're very easy to extinguish. There is no need to have your torch burning when you're not actively using it. And number 5, make sure that you always know where the fire extinguisher is at all times. If you're in a community workspace, you should be able to find it quickly when you are in a panic, because usually that's when you need a fire extinguisher. If you're in your own home workspace, you should really have one within arm's reach. So as long as you follow these simple safety precautions, the chances that you are going to have a tragic soldering related accident are reduced. Of course, if you are going to do this in your own home, consult actual experts and do everything you can to make your home workspace as safe as possible. If you're in a community workspace, please honor all posted and verbal instructions from the owners of that workspace. They are there for your help. Has there ever been a fire in Beating Dreams because of a torch? There has. We had a paper towel get lit on fire. The fire was about this big, and it lasted for about 5 seconds before we blew it out. That is the biggest fire that we've ever had at Beating Dreams because of a torch or any firing device. Fiery device? Device that makes fire. Okay, so now that I have done the thing, we're going to go ahead and sweat this solder. So sweating means that I'm basically going to melt this solder onto the backs of these bezel cups. So I'm just taking my torch and I'm kind of circling around to gently heat the flux. The reason for that is because if the flux boils too fast, it's just going to kick those pieces of solder off. Not that I can't pick them up and put them back on, but you know, I don't have to. That's less work for me. Once my flux turns clear, that indicates to me that the metal's reached a temperature where the solder can flow, and then I'm just going to concentrate my heat on my bezel cups until the solder flattens out. Now, it's really important, as soon as that solder sweats, as soon as it flattens out, get your torch off of the bezel cups, especially if you're using medium solder. The melting point of the solder is not that much different than the melting point of your sterling silver metal, and these bezel cups are really thin, so it doesn't take much to collapse the backs of them. And at that point, they're pretty much toast and you gotta get another one. Okay, so now I've taken my posts and I just put a little bit of flux on the underside of the post, and I'm just going to drop this on top of the back of my bezel cup. Why did the one that I did off camera work perfectly and this one is just there? Alright, we're going to call that good enough. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reheat these until the solder reflows and bonds my posts to my bezel cups. So you should be able to tell when this happens because they're going to kind of settle a little bit. This, you know, this is one of those where a side perspective is better, but the top perspective is better for the majority of this project. So you're just going to have to take my word for it. I'm just heating everything, and then I'm just going to kind of concentrate right there where that post meets. Okay, and that one actually went first. Alright, well, that's fine. There we go. Okay, so as you see it, it kind of moved and settled in. So that's the solder, there we go. That's the solder flowing and bonding everything together. So now I have soldered my posts to my bezel cups. So this can be a cute little stud earring all by itself. Like if you're like, woot, that's all I wanted to know, peace out. Like this is a great project just by itself. But of course, we're gonna go ahead and be a little bit more fancy with it. So now I'm gonna add those soldered rings onto there. And this is where I gotta be careful. So this is where I'm gonna step down to easy solder. Because what I don't wanna do when I am putting my rings on there is I don't want to melt these posts back off of my earrings. Not fun. So once again, I've got two very, very small pieces of solder. The good thing about this is a circle, so it doesn't matter where on here you put it. You literally can't put it in the wrong place, which is always my favorite kind of project. So I've got my two pieces of easy solder. I'm going to go ahead and sweat those. Yeah, Corvus, I mean, I always tell people, don't respect the fire. You know, be cautious around the fire, of course. It's a flame, it's a torch. Like, yes. But don't be scared of the fire, because being scared, or not that you can help if you're scared of the fire. Don't, or try not to, sorry, that was a whole lot of walkbacks, but try not to act scared of the fire, because that leads to unpredictable things like throwing hot metal and waving torches around, and that's where the dangerous stuff actually happens, is the shock responses and the, you know, the responses of the, you know, the over the top, oh my god, that was so scary, and now all of a sudden I'm waving my torch around and there's somebody standing right there, and now all of a sudden we have an unsafe situation. So respect the fire. You know, you don't have to be scared of it. It's not scary. It likes you. It's friendly fire. In the good way, not the, you know, gunfire way. Okay, so now I have one of my rings, and I've just fluxed it, and I'm gonna hold it, and I'm just gonna touch it to where I sweated that solder, and there, see? It's just that simple. And again, you have to have a bit of a delicate touch with this. Now I need to pick up my second ring, so I'm turning off my torch. I gotta be careful because the tips of these tweezers are gonna be warm. But you have to have a delicate touch with this, or you're gonna just, seriously, like, it's, the post is gonna fall off, the ring is gonna fall off, the bezel cup's gonna melt. I kid you not, some of you have seen it happen to me on the Beating Dreams stream. You know how fast this stuff can go south. So, you know, pay attention, watch for the solder to flow, and as soon as it does, call it quits. Okay, so now I'm to the next stage of, alright, well, this could totally be a post that I could hang beads from. Now we're going to go to the last stage of, we're going to actually put our hoops through these posts. Now, these are still very, very hot, so I'm going to take a minute, I'm going to move them off of my soldering board to cool down. The reason I'm doing that is because my soldering board is built to absorb and reflect heat back on my work, meaning it's made to stay hot. So if I'm trying to cool something down, putting it on the soldering board is absolutely the last, absolutely the last place you want to put something if you want it to cool down. So, alright, so those are cool enough to touch now from being sitting on the table. Also a trick, which I don't have one here, but if you have a steel bench block, if you set your pieces on the bench block, it'll actually leach the heat out of them pretty quickly. So now I've got my hoops that I made. Just gonna open them up, grab my post, put it through, grab my hoop, sorry, let's try that again with proper syntax. I'm gonna grab my post that I made, I'm gonna take my hoop and I'm gonna put it through the loop, and then I'm gonna tension fit it back closed. Like so. And when I'm doing the soldering, I want this joint here to be literally as far away from all of this as possible. Reason being, I don't want to reflow this solder and make this fall apart, and I don't want to reflow this solder and solder these together, because the whole kind of fun idea of the project is that's a free floating hoop in there. So I can set up my second one, and for that reason I'm going to be using extra easy solder to solder these hoops together, because I really don't want, especially at this point in the tutorial when we're almost done, I really don't want to blow all the soldering that I've already done. Alright. And I can put these two close together to make it more efficient for me to solder them. Again, my posts are as far away from that joint that I'm trying to make as possible. Go ahead and flex that. Do be careful, because your solder board is hot. Extra easy solder, that's that is the lowest melting point of sterling solder that you can get. Again, 2 small pieces, they don't have to be large. This time I'm going to take the pieces and I'm going to put them underneath the joints, which is a little putsy, but I've got that solder on the solder board, and then I'm going to attempt to set my joint right on top of it. There we go. So sometimes it takes a little finagling, but I promise it is worth it. Again, prep work is a pain in the butt. Nobody likes it. It's not fun. But if you do it properly, it really makes your soldering go well. I mean, some of my soldering screw-ups on stream have just been random screw-ups, but sometimes it's, you know, when I'm trying to skimp on my prep work because I'm on stream and I have limited time, and sometimes an inflated opinion is the word I'm looking for, an inflated opinion of my own skills, skimp on the prep work, and oftentimes that leads to complete and utter failure on the internet. Now I'm gonna heat these until the solder flows. Now, typically when I do this, I would heat the whole thing, but I am avoiding as much as I can that post. So I'm just sort of heating this in a semicircle. My solder did jump just a little bit, so I'm just gonna scooch it back so it's touching. Once that flux turns clear, I'm just gonna concentrate my flame on the joint. And there we go. Shoop. Up and into the joint, easy peasy. Now we're gonna do this one. This solder is still sitting underneath the joint, which is gonna make it even easier. Just heat that. Sometimes it doesn't go right away. Sometimes you have to put more heat into it. And there we go. And the cool thing about having the solder underneath is you get a physical like movement. Your piece will actually drop down because it will not have the solder propping it up anymore. And that's a nice, especially if you're newer at this, it's nice to have that visual, like actual movement indicator in addition to just watching the solder flow. So now that I have soldered all my pieces together, what I just did is I threw them into the pickle pot. So the pickle pot is a crock pot, and what it contains is the chemical called pickle. Pickle is a weak acid solution, and what it does is it cleans off all the crud on your pieces. So there's flux residue, there's oxide, there's all kinds of junk on the pieces of metal that I just put in the pickle pot. So the pickle will clean them all off so we can polish them and make them pretty to wear. If you're doing a more complicated project that has multiple joints on the same piece of metal, you oftentimes will find that your solder does not enjoy flowing on the dirty metal. So a lot of times if you're doing a more complicated project, there's intermediary pickling that goes on as well. I will fully admit right here, right now, to being a lazy pickler. The woman who taught me how to solder, who is a brilliant artist, she's really fantastic, she pickles way more than me. I pickle absolutely as little as possible because I'm, like I said, impatient. I'm impatient and lazy. And, you know, watching things pickle is kind of like waiting for paint to dry, so, you know, the common thing that both of those have in common is nobody really likes them. Okay, so I have removed my piece from the pickle, so you can see it's a lot cleaner than it was. So most of the oxide and junk is gone. That's my joint. If I want to, I can sand that down a bit. with some 320 grit sandpaper, which unfortunately is behind the pickle pot, so that's less helpful. Alright, so there's my joint. So if I want to smooth that down a bit, I should use the rough side of the sandpaper and not the back, but I can just sand that down a bit. Now you do need to know, if you're going to sand, that you are going to make sanding marks, so sometimes you're going to have to go through a couple, 3 grits of sandpaper to get the sanding marks out, so it's up to you. I usually will try and just knock it down a little bit so it's not super obvious, and then kind of leave it at that. Once again, lazy. I do keep the pickle in a crock pot because the pickle, I mean, that's true. You can't really be over enthusiastic about pickling things in any sense. You can. This is actually a question. I'm going to sand this one as well. This is actually a question that I've gotten on stream, is can you over pickle in the fabrication sense? And the answer is yes, but over pickling means you leave it in the pickle for like 2 weeks. So if you forget about it in there, yes, it does kind of develop this weird sponge that takes some effort to remove, but it's not going to destroy your piece. It's just going to make you have to put a little bit more effort into it in order to make it pretty. Now I'm going to buff these with some steel wool. This is 000 steel wool. So what it's going to do is it's going to take that matte finish that it has when it comes out of the pickle, and it's going to give it a nice kind of satiny shine. If you have access to a tumbler, at this point you could also put them in your tumbler and let them tumble for a day or so, and they get nice and shiny without you really having to put any effort into it at all. Tumble finishing is absolutely my favorite way of finishing for almost all my metal stuff, especially things that are kind of weird and crevicey like this. Let's see if I can do this without bashing my camera. But of course, like I said, it takes about a day or so in the tumbler, and that is not going to allow me to finish the project on stream for you. Alright, so there's that one, all buffed up. I'm going to do the same with the other one. Now you can of course spend as much time buffing as you want. I am definitely doing a cursory job of buffing, again just because of time and because my goal is to teach the project, not necessarily to create the most pair of beautiful earrings that was ever created on stream. Tonight I'm going to buff the inside as well, because with a hoop earring you do see the inside as well as the outside. Which was another fun idea that I had for tonight's stream, which I didn't decide to execute because, once again, I am trying to get a little more reasonable about what I think I can do in an hour, 45 minutes to an hour on stream. But I thought it would be fun to actually stamp a saying on the inside of the earrings. I thought that would be kind of cool as well. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and unplug my pickle pot because I'm done soldering, and bad things happen when you leave your pickle pot plugged in all night. Bad smells and possibly fires. We didn't have a fire, but it was a near thing. And now I'm going to set my stone. So this is where I'm going to grab my ring clamp. Okay, so this is a ring clamp, and it's a weird device, but it's really useful, and I don't use it as much as I should. What it's for is for holding things that are difficult to hold, like earring posts. So I can take my earring post, put it into my ring clamp, and I'm putting it near the edge just because you can see my ring clamp is very well worn, and the middle of it is not going to hold an earring post. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to put the wedge in the back of the earring clamp, and you want to make sure that wedge is in there securely. So usually I will bash it on something. If you need to do any more buffing while it's in the ring clamp, this is a really good time to do that. And then if you are using an opaque stone like the tiger eye that I'm using now, you actually don't have to worry about cleaning out inside that bezel cup. If you're using a transparent stone though, you do, because the transparent stones basically act like a magnifying glass and you can see all the crud that's in there. Alright, I'm going to try these two. So I'm going to take my stone, I'm going to drop it into my bezel cup. I want to make sure it goes all the way in and is level. Now, I didn't do a test fit on that because I know these are calibrated stones and it's a 6mm bezel cup. If there is any doubt in your... Bye Lori, good luck with the vet. If there's any doubt in your mind that that stone is not going to fit in that bezel cup, what you want to do is you want to lay a piece of dental floss or thread across your bezel cup and then try and put your stone in, because that way, if it doesn't fit, you can pop it out. I think every one of us who fabricates has had at least 1 or 2 stones that we put in the bezel cups and went, oh crap, because they won't go down, but they won't come out, and then you're just stuck. So now I'm going to roll over the edges of my bezel cup, so you can see where that's my straight edge there. Just needs to roll over to hold that cabochon. That's where this tool comes in. This is called a prong pusher. So what I'm going to do is use my prong pusher to push that edge in and then down against my cabochon. With the earrings, it's kind of a pain because they want to keep coming out. But you can see I'm starting to push that down, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to move to the opposite side, because you want to try and work in opposition as much as possible. So again, in and down, and you can see how that changes the outside shape of the bezel cup. In and down, like so. And then I'm just going to work on all of these places where the bezel cup's not hugging the cabochon. I'm just going to go around and around and around until I get those all pushed down. It's really awkward to try and do that at this angle, so we're going to do it like this instead. When you're working, and if I had a bench pin, I could brace this in my bench pin. I don't, so I'm just going to kind of brace it on the table. But when you're working, it's important to remember that if you're not trying to, show off your work via webcam, you can definitely always move the work to a more comfortable position for you, okay? You don't have to go to it. It can come to you. And this is why most of your traditional proper jeweler's benches, when you first sit at them, they feel really high. And that's because you need to have your work at or close to eye level when you're working on things that small. So rather than constantly bringing your eyes down to the work, a jeweler's bench brings the work up closer to the level of your eyes. Makes a huge, huge difference. It does take some getting used to though. Okay, so that cabochon is set. So the idea behind a bezel is the bezel's now been closed around the cabochon, so it has a mechanical connection. So it's in there, it's got no glue or anything. It's just going to stay in there because we've made the exit smaller than the actual cabochon. Alright, so that's one earring done. Now we're going to do the other one. Just drop that in there. Put the wedge in. Make sure it's in there good and tight. Drop your cabochon in there. Like so. Make sure it's level. And then you're going to use your prong pusher again to... And so the motion is, first of all, you want to hold your prong pusher in the palm of your hand, which is one reason why it's hard for me to do it, because if I do that, my hand just blocks the entire frame. So I'm holding it at my fingertips, but you really want to have a good grip on it. And then in and down. Okay, the down is important. You'll see if you watch, like most of my motion on this is the down. It's not as much in, it's more down. Because you're taking this flat, straight up wall of your bezel cup and you're trying to curve it down over your cabochon. You can also watch my stone setting face, which is probably not one of my most attractive faces to make on the internet. So when I first started setting stones with bezel cups, I would never roll them over because I could never get them to look smooth, and the problem there was I wasn't trying hard enough. It really does take a solid amount of effort, and usually a couple, 3 times around at least, to get them rolled down sufficiently to hold your stone in. So there's that one, and that is my pair of tiger eye hoops, flat wire hoops. And then these were my original ones that I did with the pattern wire, and then these are a couple of druzies. So fun sterling earring class for tonight. These wound up a little bit bigger, but I'm pretty happy with the tiger eye ones. I think they look really neat. And I could also, if I wanted to hang some beads inside here, that would also be a fun variant on this tutorial. So thank you all so much for hanging out with us on the Beading Dreams stream this Torch Thursday evening. For anybody out there who doesn't know me, hey, I'm Allison from Beading Dreams in Dallas, Texas. We are an actual brick and mortar retail bead store. We're here on Lovers Lane in Dallas, and we're open for business Monday through Saturday from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. If you're not local in Dallas, you can find us on this channel, twitch.tv/beadingdream. 5 times a week with complimentary tutorials. We stream Wednesday through Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time with a bonus lunchtime stream Thursdays at noon, and live merchandise sales every Wednesday and every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Tomorrow is our Freeform Friday tutorial. That means I'm going to pick a project. I don't even know what it is yet. I'm going to finish it start to finish. I'm going to do it start to finish on stream. That's always a good time. Sometimes I succeed, sometimes I fail. It's always fun no matter what happens. And then we'll be back on Saturday with a fiber crafting project. That's going to be our crochet lariat with a slight variation. So hope everybody has a fantastic Thursday evening, and we'll see you all back on this channel, twitch.tv/beatingdream. Tomorrow at 6 for Freeform Friday. Also, if there's anybody new out there who has not already done so, do us a huge favor. Like us on Facebook or Instagram. Follow us on, or like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or Twitch. Everyone have a great night, and we'll see y'all tomorrow.